Hello and good evening, everybody, or as Unai Emery would say, good evening. Welcome back to another episode of the Hotspur Huddle. My name is Nelson. I've actually been given the hosting duties today, and I am not but alone. I'm not by myself. Today, I am actually joined by my brother from another mother who is here with us today. Wes, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you, Nelson. Obviously, great to be back. Band are back together again, like Cole and York. Same as last week. Holly, where are you? We miss you. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I think I'm still buzzing. I don't think I've had the come down yet from Saturday. So yeah, no, looking forward to this one tonight for sure.
Wicked. Well, we'll get onto that very soon. But as you can see, yes, our trio is actually not complete with Holly not being here. So we send our best wishes to Holly, who's actually doing some other business elsewhere in London. So, Holly, we hope to see you next week. But we've got a lot in store for you today, guys. Everything all football. But where to start? I think, as Wes mentioned himself, still buzzing, as is the whole Tottenham Hotspur fan base. Wes, wow, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. kickoff. I mean, we spoke about this last week, and you mentioned something really important, which was that, you guys have had City's number over the last few years, especially when Pep is in charge. And seeing that City had lost, 4 games leading up to this fixture, how are you feeling heading into the game?
Do you know what? It's a funny feeling when we play City, because usually when you say to somebody we're playing Man City, you would kind of then go, right, well, if you keep it down to like 3, you know what I mean? Get out and conceding 3. You usually go, well, that's all right. That's not a bad day. But for some bizarre reason, I was quite confident going to the deck he had, as it's now been nicknamed by every Spurs fan. So yeah, it was just a bizarre feeling. Like, I didn't feel like we were going to lose for some mad, bizarre reason. I don't know what it was. I don't know why, but I felt like we were going to go and win. And boy, what a performance! What a win! But I think the performance as well. I think take that first sort of 10, 15 minutes out of it, we absolutely dominated City, and I've never seen a team go to the Etihad, certainly in Pep's reign, and be as convincing in a performance for the majority of the game like Tottenham were. It was just, yeah, I'm still buzzing off of it. It's still, still very fresh in the mind. Obviously, I was at the Etihad as well, so to be there, was just fantastic, really.
I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that you were there. Obviously, you mentioned last week that you were heading to the Etihad, and I only saw the score at half time. So it wasn't quite a shock to see you guys 2-0 up. I think it was the way in which the game ended that I was quite shocked. I think a lot of people were quite shocked to see it end 4-0 to City. But if you actually, like you mentioned, if you actually watched the game, it was an actual dominant performance. And I remember you mentioned you haven't seen anyone at the Etihad kind of go there and perform like that. But I remember there's actually someone in your team that actually had a similar performance because he bagged 2. But I remember when it was lockdown, his Leicester team went and actually battered City as well. I think it was roughly 6-2. Tell me, Wes, what was your thoughts on Madders in that game? And if there's any other standout players from that 4-0 victory, point them out, because I know Madders was absolutely fantastic, especially on his first game.
Madders was brilliant. It's one of those games and one of those performances that we want to see more of from him. Like, I don't want that to be like, right, that's a worldy game, and then all of a sudden now he's going to go missing for sort of 5-6 games. Because if we look back at last season from James Maddison's point of view, the first 10 games he was brilliant. Then he got injured, came back and was awful. Like, was absolutely awful. And I think, Saturday, it was a bit of a shock, I think, to a lot of Spurs fans to see him in the team, given his form this season been a bit inconsistent. Equally, Tottenham's form this year has been inconsistent as well. But it was a bit of a shock to see him starting over Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski out to wide right, who was just on another level. Kulusevski, like, he was balling out like you would not believe. What a player, in the words of Pep. But I think you could pretty much make a case for the whole Tottenham team. Porro and Udogie defended really well. Vicario, I mean, come out that he's basically played an hour with a broken ankle, but like shot stopping at crucial times, brilliant. On Saturday, the Welsh Maldini and Dragashin at the back were like phenomenal, and I think Dragashin looked a hell of a lot more comfortable alongside Ben Davies as well. And I said this on the Park Lane podcast on Sunday. Dragashin looks more comfortable alongside Van der Ven or Davis than he does Romero, because I think profile wise they're very similar in terms of centre backs. Like they both want to be on that front foot and leading. And then I think when Dragashin and Romero play together, when one goes to lead, the other one doesn't sort of know what to do and doesn't cover the other one really well. But yeah, Basuma did really well, held that midfield despite the fact he got an early booking inside 15 seconds. Papsa, I think, covered every blade of grass out there. Sonny was good. Solanke was brilliant. And yeah, it was just, I think it was one of those performances like you could make a case for like the whole team getting a man of the match. But I think standout for me was probably Kulusevski.
Yeah, I've never actually heard that before, Kulusevski, but I think that is something very worthy to describe his performance, because I think he had Gvardiol on skates. I've never seen, I mean, the last person that had Gvardiol on skates, we remember, was Messi in the World Cup. And Kulu just absolutely battered him from left to right. It was sensational. I think he deserves some praise for that performance. Wes, before we move on to all the other Premier League games, I want to give Big Ange his shout out, because we remember last season, for anybody neutral watching today's show, you might remember last season Tottenham went to the Etihad as well, and they actually had injuries themselves, and people are likely going to make excuses and said City had their injuries for this game, on the weekend, but you guys had that same, situation last season and still managed to get a draw. How much credit goes to Ange for this performance that you guys pulled out on the weekend?
A lot of credit. There's so many similarities between the game on Saturday and the game last year. Believe it, both games, last year was a Sunday, I think, but this year's Saturday night. Cold, like Baltic weather, by the way. It was absolutely freezing. So yeah, pretty much Baltic weather. No first choice centre backs. Injuries in other areas of the pitch. And yeah, we've gone there last season and played our football. Like Mikel Arteta told us, basically, you have to go to the Etihad, park the bus to get a result. You have to play like 6 defenders, park the bus, and that's how you get a result. And Ange went, forget that, mate. We go to the Etihad, we play our football, we play the Tottenham way, and it just came up. And I feel like it's almost now, put it this way, if I'm a manager of another team in the Premier League and I do not take on Ange's blueprint on how to beat City, then you might as well not be in a job in the Premier League, let's be honest. Because Ange's literally just created this blueprint here in that game on Saturday. This is how you beat City. I know City aren't on the best of runs and they let a 3-goal lead slip again last night to Feyenoord, but at the same, that's how you do it. So I think what was really, really crucial was we almost done a City on City, because City a lot of the time will get you on one side of the pitch and then all of a sudden switch it and just open it out, and all of a sudden you got like a 2v1 situation. The amount of times we did that on Saturday was brilliant. It was phenomenal. And I've never seen City rattled like that. I've never seen City pulled apart like that. Kyle Walker is finished. Gundogan had so much paella in Spain last year. It was ridiculous. Like, he couldn't move. And I felt for Rico Lewis. Like, loads of people were saying, like, oh, no wonder Spurs want Rico Lewis playing midfield. Yeah, but the job he had to do was not only his job, he had to cover Gundogan, because Gundogan couldn't move. And I think you saw that for the 4th goal when Brennan Johnson sliding in. Like, Gundogan is like towing a caravan to try and get back in and can't. So I think there's a deeper issue with City. It's not just Rodri being out. I think Ruben Diaz is a huge miss, because he's a bit of a throwback in terms of a defender. Like, I wouldn't say head it, kick it, but he will put his body in where it hurts. He will put his body on the line, etc. And I think City are missing him a lot. I also think they're missing the creativity of Doku on that left-hand side as well, just to balance it off, because I don't think Savinho looked comfortable on that left-hand side, I have to say. Haaland missed 3 gilt-edge chances as well. And how many times can you say that? But yeah, back to your point, Nelson, your question. Ange deserves a lot of credit. Everybody moans at him, especially when we lose, that he's not adaptable. He doesn't change things. He's proved that he doesn't really need to be honest. So yeah, big up Ange. Big up Ange.
I think he deserves his flowers. I think I like him as a manager. I've mentioned to you and Holly in previous weeks about, the culture that he's bringing back at Spurs, making them compete again. So in my opinion, I think that is the best performance I've seen at the Etihad since Pep's taken charge. I think you guys got to give hats off to you guys. Well done. Moving on, Wes, obviously following on from the 4-0 victory, we had other games as well in the Premier League that weekend. Any sort of games that stood out to you? Because I guess one stood out to me. If we dive into that, I think the game on Monday night was a very interesting one because I'm not sure if you watched the game, but obviously West Ham United go to St. James's Park and actually pick up an impressive 2-0 victory with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Spider-Man himself, having a man of the match performance. What were your thoughts on that game, and why didn't Newcastle kind of kick on from what they built on before the international break?
Yeah, I think from a West Ham perspective, those 3 points were very much needed. West Ham have been dreadful this season. They've not been good at all. There was a lot of hype at the start of the season, Lopetegui coming in and the signings that they were making. Many people's tip that to actually have sort of won the window were West Ham, given the state that they were sort of left in. And it was like, right, they're looking to build on, what they had. Yeah, disappointing one from Newcastle, but I don't think Newcastle really created many out-and-out chances. I think they were sort of like half chances. But credit to West Ham, they didn't really let Newcastle settle on the ball. And yeah, I think Lopetegui got his tactics spot on. But yeah, a couple of games that stood out for me, Nels, both for good and bad, was obviously the bad side of it was obviously your result against Forest. Because I think, we spoke last week about how potentially tricky that game was going to be, and it felt like Arsenal just brushed Forest aside near enough and just went, okay, get in, get the job done and get out. But I think that the biggest shock for me at the weekend was Fulham Wolves. 4-1 win for Wolves. I definitely did not see that come in. My thoughts on Wolves this year. They've been horrific. I think they're one of my tips to go down, actually, of Wolves, because I just think I don't see a lot from them. And I think there are better teams than Wolves. Wolves have got some good players, don't get me wrong, but I think there are better teams, like in terms of a team unit. I think there are better teams than Wolves this year. So that one really shocked me. Some great goals and great finishes from Cunha, which is really annoying because obviously you tipped him for FPL, etc., etc. But yeah, I liked the United Ipswich game as well. I loved the Ipswich approach, proper going at it and being a bit fearless. Delap almost scored a cheeky goal as well, which would have been nice. But yeah, I was disappointed with Newcastle, to be fair. Obviously, I had Isak and I put Anthony Gordon in my FPL team. I know we're going to touch on FPL a little bit later, but yeah, I think from West Ham's point of view, much needed 3 points. And I think if they didn't pick up 3 points, Lopetegui's position was under threat. And yeah, it's a disappointing one for Newcastle because they're probably looking to build momentum, and it feels like they can't do that at the minute. They'll come off the back of a really good result and then have maybe one or two sticky ones, and then they get a bit of a worldy result out of nowhere. Obviously, like they did a few weeks ago against you boys. So yeah, I think Newcastle are struggling for a little bit of consistency at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think that season in the Champions League really took an effect on them as well, because that was something that they weren't used to. Especially, I've spoken to a lot of Newcastle fans, and they said that they peaked too early, in the sense that they've got the investment, they've got the players, but I think no one had expected them to reach that Champions League, and I think they've just really not been able to recover from getting to the Champions League as well. Well, I know you mentioned the Fulham and Wolves game. Seeing as Fulham were on the wrong side of a defeat against Wolves, looking forward to your game, your lot against Fulham on the weekend. What are your thoughts on this game heading into the match? What do you think?
Well, if we're going off current form, we're due to lose this one. To be honest, and typical Tottenham, we will probably do that. So it wouldn't shock me if we lost to Fulham, given the fact that we've come off a massive high in beating City. Obviously, we've got an important game for our Europa League league phase tomorrow night against Roma.
Yeah.
And I don't think that game should really be dismissed. But yeah, the Fulham game, true to form, Dr. Tottenham may turn up and yeah, he'll Fulham or Arsenal's reserves, as it seems to be turning into at the minute. Obviously, with Iwobi, Reece Nelson, Smith Rowe, a few ex-Arsenal boys in there. So I know they'll enjoy it if they pick up a win. But yeah, Fulham are an interesting team. Like, they'll hit a bit of form, and then all of a sudden you think, okay, can they really push on and kick on? And then all of a sudden they'll have a bit of a dip where they have a run of games that don't quite go their way. And then they'll kind of pick it back up again. So yeah, I think from a Spurs point of view, really important that we build on the fantastic result we had last week at the weekend against City. So it's important that we get 3 points, because the narrative will just be, well, Spurs can do it against your Cities, your Uniteds, etc., but can't do it against teams that they're expected to win against. So I think there's a lot more on this game, I think, from a Spurs perspective than perhaps people realise.
That's a good point you make, because I think after the wonderful win on the weekend, you're thinking that you guys would probably brush, or loads of neutrals would probably think that you'd brush aside Fulham, with their form heading with true to form. But as you mentioned, Dr. Tottenham, because obviously I saw a comment, someone said that it's true to Tottenham to have lost to Ipswich 2-1 and then absolutely spank Man City 4-0, and then that you mentioned you wouldn't be surprised if you were to lose. But how do you think? I know you don't have your tactics board with us today, but what do you think? How do you think both managers might set up? How do you think Ange might set up for that game?
Well, I think in terms of a tactical sort of analysis, I think what was really interesting on Saturday against City was the fullbacks. Usually we see Porro and Udogie operating really high when we're in possession, as almost like two number 10s. Wasn't the case against City. And it actually helped us out in transition when we lost the ball. So I think Ange has shown a little bit of tactical flexibility in that. Obviously still wants players to be comfortable on the ball and receive on the half turn. I don't think that's going to change, because that's more of a principle of play as opposed to how you set up. But yeah, I obviously he hasn't got too many options in terms of rotation at the moment because of injuries and suspensions, obviously with Bentancur and stuff like that. So I think it's more from a Fulham point of view, who's going to come in for who? Like, is it going to be Jimenez or Muniz up top? Is Harry Wilson going to start, or is Adama Traore? Smith Rowe's likely to play as a 10. Is Iwobi going to play off of a wing? Is he going to come more centrally? Is Sander Berger going to play in midfield? Sasa Lucic, is he going to play? So I think there's a lot more in there for Fulham. Could be like either ors, really. I don't know what about Anderson, because obviously he limped off in the Wolves game. So if his injury is one that keeps him out, I think that would make Spurs potentially more favourites for the game than what we already are. Because I think Anderson's come in and done a solid job at the back there for Fulham. So yeah, I think there's more probably questions for the Fulham point of view in terms of who's going to play personnel wise than Tottenham, simply because Tottenham don't have many options to be able to rotate.
No, I hear that. I mean, I do expect you guys to go there and hopefully get a victory. I think, like you mentioned, the key is, I think most people won't see from a Spurs perspective. Everyone will again think you brush them over. But I think this is a very important game for you guys. I guess to build on, because you guys, I think you have a favourable run, and I think there are fixtures that you can win. So I think this would definitely, after this victory, if you do guys win against Fulham, I think I'm expecting you guys to kick on from there and actually get a successive amount of wins. I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
But then you say about our run now. So in this run coming up, we've got Chelsea, Liverpool. I think there's another midweek where we play you guys fairly soon as well. We got Carabao Cup against Man United. We've obviously got Roma tomorrow night, as I mentioned. We've got the Rangers in the Europa League coming up as well. So it's just a lot of games thick and fast. So it's relentless nature. But it's going to be an interesting run of games for Spurs between sort of now and obviously when the festive period is over.
Yeah, I think I mean favourable in the sense of, because of how well you played against City, if those performances turn up week in, week out, then they're favourable to you guys. I think
Oh,
you guys look.
we're
Oh,
winning the lot, mate. We're winning the lot. If we turn in, listen, if we played City 38 times a
yeah.
season, we're winning the lot. Like 100%, we're winning the lot.
Fairly. But no, moving on, Wes. After addressing all those other Premier League games, we've obviously received some news. I think everybody has seen the news in the Premier League in regards to the sacking of, I believe, Steve Cooper for Leicester City. What are your thoughts on this? Because I was very much shocked to see it happen now. I think if it were to happen, I think maybe within the January transfer window, I think kind of give it halfway and then kind of make your decision. Do you think Leicester made the right choice? Do you think he had to go at this point, or do you think it's the wrong call and maybe they could have waited a bit longer?
I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised because Leicester have been dreadful, I would say, for most of the season. I know they've had some tough games against some, teams that you expect to be sort of in and around there, but it feels like Leicester, when they play under Cooper, they didn't offer much like within games. And it was like they were sort of living off moments. It was almost like they're waiting for somebody to kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck and do something. So yeah, it doesn't really shock me. I think the timing is probably the only strangest thing, obviously just coming off the back of an international break. But I think if you remember rightly, the last time Leicester in the Premier League, they waited and waited and waited, and they left it too late in sacking Brendan Rodgers. And then the new manager that came in didn't have enough time. Having said that, I don't think Steve Cooper should have got the job in the first place. To be honest, it was a bizarre decision to give it to him, not because of his Forest connection, but you look at the way that Leicester played under Enzo Maresca, and you go, well, Cooper doesn't really play in that in even a similar way. Never mind the same way, like in a similar way. He's not a manager that I kind of feel sorry for. He's a person that I feel sorry for. Like when I watch him in interviews, because you're just gonna go like, Steve, cheer up a bit, mate. Like looks like he's gonna cry near enough every press conference. I do feel like though there was maybe certain promises that weren't kept, but the football that Leicester played wasn't great. I don't think Leicester fans are expecting a hell of a lot this year. Given the fact that they've just come up, finances aren't particularly there with FFP, PSR, all that in there. But at the same time, like you want to see something from your team. And I don't think Leicester fans were really seeing too much from their team, given some of the players that they have at their disposal. Like I know Fatawi's picked up an injury now and he's out for the season, but he was looking a bit of a shadow of the player that he was and the levels that he was performing at. Like Mavididi hasn't quite found his rhythm yet. Vardy's hit and miss, and so Buonanotte's been a good signing, but again he's young, and when you're a club like Leicester, if you're having to, no disrespect to Buonanotte, but if you're having to shop on loan at a club like Brighton for players, as a fan, for me, that's kind of a bit of an alarm bell, because I don't think Leicester should be making those types of movements in the transfer market. Like they let Ndidi's contract run out and then re-signed him. Like there was a few too many sort of alarm bells, I think, from a club point of view at Leicester. But yeah, and I think ultimately it's what cost Cooper his job. There wasn't that connection with the fans, obviously, with his Forest connection and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I think it was almost a case of when and not if with Cooper. So yeah, I think now is a decent time, because the new manager that can come in has got the best part of a month, you'd say, obviously loads of games, but the best part of a month to assess the squad, and then look at potential January targets, whether they will be similar, because recruitment departments always work a couple of windows ahead. So whether those targets would already be identified, or whether this new manager coming in will be like, actually, this is the way I want to go. So Leicester, I think in January, are going to either be really quiet or really busy. And I don't think there's going to be any in between with them.
No, well put. I know. I really like the point you mentioned in regards to, the actual hiring of Steve Cooper. It was quite a baffling one.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show how far Leicester have fallen from the days where we really praised the recruitment,
Mm.
the young players that they brought in, similar to Brighton, and how Brighton continue to kind of reproduce these kind of top class kind of like recruitment players from all over the world.
Mm.
I think Leicester lost a touch of that. So the fact that they brought in someone like Steve Cooper, who is completely opposite, in my opinion, to Enzo, I think, I think fans heading into the season are not looking forward or not expecting much. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. They're either going to be really loud and make some noise,
Yeah.
or it's going to be quiet. In terms of managerial replacements, because we know a new manager bounce exists. We know there's always that kind of bounce that exists. I haven't seen any names that have popped up. However, from the top of your head, are there any managers that spring to mind that could potentially suit the role in terms of coming into Leicester, assessing the squad like you mentioned, and maybe kind of trimming it if they are given, hopefully, a long-term period to then, build their philosophy?
Yeah. I think what was also difficult for Steve Cooper was, and if you look back to his time at Forest, obviously he signed a lot of players that he had at England under 17 level. Obviously, he couldn't really do that at Leicester because he signed them all for Forest, to be honest. So, yeah, I think that's where he's come unstuck. But I think in terms of managerial appointments coming in, now this has got to be crucial for Leicester. I think they have to get this one right. So, do they? Because I think they've been long-term admirers of Graham Potter. So do they go, right, come on then, let's really sort of push the boat out to get Graham Potter? I know he's turned down Leicester once, he turned them down in the summer, but do they go in for him again and kind of really push the boat out for him? Or do they go for I wouldn't say a younger manager because Potter's still relatively young, but do they go for a bit of a name to kind of, get some attraction? So are they going to go for somebody like Ruud van Nistelrooy, who may or may not have impressed the Leicester hierarchy from the 2 games that United played against Leicester in terms of how Van Nistelrooy got Man United playing, etc. Those are the 2 that kind of spring to mind at the moment. I think those 2, from what I've heard and seen in the media, that kind of seem to be the favourites. I think Van Nistelrooy is probably just edging that in terms of the favourite stakes at the moment. But yeah, I think, like I say, this one's got to be crucial. I've heard somebody mention Michael Carrick at Borough, who's done a really good job with Borough. Utilised the loan market though really well, and obviously don't think he'll be able to do that at Leicester. But what he's done at Borough transformed the way that they play, because they weren't playing anywhere near the type of football that they are under him. Obviously did a lot for Morgan Rogers, and I think Morgan Rogers credits Carrick for the role that he played, in terms of getting him the move to Villa, in the first place. So I think Carlos Corberan at West Brom, he's done a really good job in some unbelievably difficult circumstances at West Brom. I think he's been hit with a transfer embargo, Corberan, and is having to really wheel and deal. So I think from that point of view, it'll be interesting to see what Corberan does. But I don't think the Leicester job at this moment in time is one for him like now. I think
Yeah.
it would be after this particular person, however long they get, I think then they might look at Corberan. So I think from a Leicester point of view, it's either, I think it could be Potter or Van Nistelrooy. But yeah, there's a couple of names floating about in the Championship. But again, Leicester need to quickly work out whether they're going to have a bit of a go to try and sustain themselves again in the Premier League, or whether they want to yo-yo a little bit like what West Brom and a few other clubs have done in the past.
Well, I think that's going to be really hard for them, because I think the first 2 names you mentioned, I think, are perfect kind of replacements. However, obviously, Graham Potter's, I don't know why he's being stingy, but I think that's an opportunity for him, because I think the important thing is for Leicester, you probably got to anticipate if you get relegated, who do you want to remain in that position to then build up like Enzo has done? Because I do imagine if Enzo did stay at Leicester, we're probably looking at a really different Leicester side. We're talking flair, we're talking zippy passing, we're just talking discipline and structure. But we unfortunately we haven't got that. So I think that's something that I agree with you. It has to be the right appointment because you're looking at, especially on a long-term basis. I don't think a yo-yo would suit Leicester. I don't think they've been about that. I think they've always been about bringing in someone who can actually build. So I hope they don't kind of go away from their roots there. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see for that, Wes. We'll have to wait and see. So moving on, which is our favorite part of the show. We like to talk, which is not FPL just yet, but we actually like to talk about all things women's football. And we are now currently in the international break, guys. And this weekend, I'll actually be going myself. There will be a massive game, probably the biggest game I think that our Lionesses will have ever encountered, and that is facing the US women's team. Obviously, if you don't know about the US women's team, probably the best women's team of all time, countless of World Cup victories, amazing football, kind of has been trailblazers in the women's football industry and just, you know, continuing to break barriers. But they actually bring a friendly foe back to London, Wes, and that is the relentless Emma Hayes. And I'm actually very, very nervous about this game on the weekend. What are your thoughts coming into for this game for this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, I have to say, because there are a few injuries to what you would argue as key players for Serena. So we got no Ella Toon, we got no Lauren Hemp. I think Maya Letitia is out with concussion as well, and obviously she's been pretty solid for United this season. But yeah, Emma coming back home, I think she's buzzing to be back. Heard a snippet of an interview she did recently over the last couple of days. She's loving life being back in London. I think she's visited her hometown of Camden, which I know isn't a million miles away from you. So yeah, she's really happy to be back. The US women's national team are also training at Tottenham as well. So Tottenham are looking after them. She's had a chat with Ange. She's also caught up with Vicky Jepson as well, because I think at one point Emma Hayes won Manager of the Year, Vicky Jepson won Young Coach of the Year or something like that. So yeah, but yeah, it's going to be a really, really good game, and it's going to be a game of high level elite footballers, male or female. Scrap that. It's just going to be a real high elite game. And you know, I mentioned the fact that England are missing Lauren Hemp, but if you look at the options still that England have in the wide areas, you've got Beth Mead and Chloe Kelly, like two of the best wide players in the WSL. So it's not bad. It's not bad options to sort of have in there. So yeah, it should be a really, really good game. And Nelson, I sincerely hope that you, because you're going to be in attendance, will enjoy it.
Thank you, my brother. I mean, I'm very much nervous. The reason why I'm nervous is because I was there for the last game against Germany, and that was a crazy game. The fact that there were 5 goals in the first half, and I think England were all over the shop in defence. And I'm so sorry, but at that point, I think I was very worried about a certain Leah Williamson coming back into the squad because I didn't think she had earned her spot, you know, to be playing. But Serena obviously has her core players, similar to how Gareth Southgate had his core players, you know, for the men's squad. But obviously, Leah in the WSL has actually been picking up a run of games and a run of form. So I actually think her place now is warranted. And also her being captain, she is the vocal point. She is the leader. But I'm worried about the defense in particular because you're coming up against the likes of Sophia Smith and Trinity Rodman, probably 2 of the best wide players in the game. They were relentless in the Paris 2024 Olympics. And Emma just kind of got, I don't know what Emma did, but she's just kind of kick-started something that I think is a scary freight train. It's an absolutely scary freight train. And those 2 in particular are my favorite players in that squad. So I think Serena's going to think about, I think she's got to think about really deeply how she's going to have to, you know, kind of eliminate those wide players. But that doesn't mean they don't have, you know, other dangerous players as well in midfield, as well as in their fullback positions as well. So it's going to be a really entertaining one. I agree with you. High level football, because that's what I saw against Germany. And I am hoping, fingers crossed, for an England Lionness victory. So we're going to have to wait and see. I'm giving my prediction early, Wes, and I don't like to give predictions too early, but I'm going to go for a 3-2 defeat. I don't like to say that, but I've gone for a 3-2 defeat to the hands of the US women's team. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this is what happens in terms of the US when you have a team full of winners, and then you add in a serial winner in terms of a coach. Like Emma Hayes is relentless. I can imagine her just not giving them like an inch to slip up or drop standards. And yeah, by the sounds of it, Emma's making all the right noises. She's loving life as US women's national team head coach. I would have absolutely loved her potentially to take on the England job, and I think it's one that she's waited and waited and waited for, and then it hasn't come about. And then I think that's partly the reason why she's taking the US one, because the England one wasn't forthcoming. So yeah, it's going to be a cracking game. I don't know whether I'll be able to tune in or not, because I don't know what my plans are on Saturday, I'll be honest. But if I get the opportunity to, then I will definitely tune in 100%. But I know that it's West Ham Arsenal playing at a similar time, so that may get priority, unfortunately, for the women's side of things. But that one might get priority in my house.
No worries, no worries. Well, for those of you watching, tune in next week, because we will be diving into that game and the result as well from Wembley Stadium. Now, Wes, we have approached our final segment of today's show, which is your personal favorite, which is our FPL. And I'm going to pull up your one on my phone. I'm not, fancy like Holly. I can't do that. I wasn't born with the tech wizard stuff. But your team got a very good 57 points on the weekend. Talk us through your team and the players that kind of stood out for you.
Yeah, so obviously 57 points to add to the 110 that I've had over the last couple of weeks. So it could have been a bit more, Nels, if I'm honest, because I had Dean Henderson on my bench, who obviously saved the penalty. And I didn't realise saved penalties for goalkeepers get you points. So even though he conceded a couple, he's pulled it back with that. And I had burnt Leno in net, because I thought, well, they're playing Wolves. So Leno didn't get me any points. I brought Gvardio in for Ruben Diaz, because Diaz is injured. He didn't get me any points, and he was shocking. So I had Cucurella, picked up a couple points. Gay picked up a point. Pedro Porro.
Yeah.
My brother, Pedro Porro, picked me up 14 points for his goal and his all-round play against City. Midfield-wise, Kulusevski, what a player. I put in Kulu, brought him in because he usually does well against City, obviously at the deck he had. But then I had a bit of a strange one, because I had Palmer, only picked up a couple points. Morgan Rogers, couple of points. Anthony Gordon, who I was expecting to do bits, didn't happen. But then captain, the Egyptian king, Mohamed Salah. 26 points. So he's literally got me like near enough half my points pretty much. Obviously picked up a couple goals against Southampton. I'm annoyed at him though, because he took his shirt off when he celebrated, so he picked up a yellow card.
Yeah,
so I could have had 27 points.
Right.
So Salah, when you score, don't take your top off when you celebrate. All right, it kills us FPL players. I had Isak as my vice captain. So yeah, he only picked me up a couple of points. So yeah, I had that guy Welbs. I put him on the bench. But yeah, I'm really happy with the way things are going with my team at the moment. May need to tweak a couple of things heading into this latest round of fixtures. But yeah, Salah and Porro obviously standouts. Kulusevski with 6 points as well. So Nelson, the big question that everybody wants to know is, how did you get on?
Well, my bro, I'll tell you how I got on. I got on really well. I'm very happy with my team. I got 78 points on the weekend. Yeah, I got 78. My defense was not great, but I think Gabriel with the home fixture against Nottingham Forest got me his clean sheet points. I actually played Dean Henderson, so I got his 7 points from his penalty save, because I remember looking at the at my phone and seeing that, like he got 7 points, and I thought, well, Palace this is great. Palace are winning, and they got a clean sheet. But I've checked to see that he's actually saved the penalty. So yes, anybody who does not know, penalty save can get you points, very big points. But I think it was a couple of my players in my midfield. and my strike force that kind of stood out. I went for a 5 in midfield. I played a 4-5-1. And Bukayo Saka was who I transferred in. Got me a very good. It got me a very good 13 points. Mateus Cunha, as I've mentioned, please understand that this guy is an actual baller, and he got me 16 points. And what's funny is that if I actually captained him, he would have got more points than Mo Salah. But Mo Salah, I think, came in clutch for a lot of players over the weekend. Whereas the fact that, I think Southampton were winning, and I was like, oh gosh, this is not going well from a fan perspective. Even though as a fan, I should be rooting against Liverpool because they shouldn't win the title. But yeah, I think people need to point out. I need to point out to people, guys, that yellow card makes a massive difference that Mo Salah got, because if he did not get that yellow card, he would have earned 15 points overall, which would have meant 30 in total if he had captained him. So that's the difference it makes. Like another 4 points could like really make a difference to your table. So that was kind of like my squad. Whereas I had Fabianski on the bench who actually got a clean sheet. I didn't think he would get a clean sheet against Newcastle. And then my big mistake was I didn't want to put Anthony Robinson, but I felt as though Fulham could have done something to earn, 3 points, or at least if they were going to score some goals, it was going to be goals galore. He could have assisted. So I left Big Dom on the bench, and Big Dom had earned 5 points for your wonderful victory against City. So I missed out on another 5 points from Solanke. But into next week, I've actually put Solanke back in my squad for the home game against Fulham. I really hope he doesn't let me down, because that Ipswich game I'm still bitter about. But that is essentially like my front three. I've got Cunha, Chris Wood. Actually, no, I've drafted in João Pedro this week. Your guy.
Oh, yes.
I've drafted in João Pedro with a front three of Cunha and Dominic Solanke. Wes, tell me about your plans looking into this game week. Any players that you're looking to draft in?
I don't know, is the honest truth, because I haven't paid much attention because I've still been on the high from the City win. So yeah, I'm maybe looking at putting Havertz in, because you would argue slightly favourable fixture for Arsenal. That guy Welbs may come in, but do you know what's really frustrating with Hurtzler at Brighton is if you put this is what I found, if you put João Pedro or Welbeck in your team, he tends to play the other one. So that's the only downside. I'll probably put Henderson in as well instead of Leno for this coming weekend. May take out Vardiol as well because of City's game against Liverpool. We'll see how we go. But obviously Friday is the day where we make some changes. So Friday is the cut-off day. So I'll probably know more by Friday, to be fair.
I'm a bit gutted with myself because I always recommend people to wait until Friday, but I was so eager to get João Pedro. I think after that performance, you're thinking, why not? But I agree with you. It could be that on the weekend, or I know their game's on a Friday actually against Southampton.
Yes.
So I think the deadline is a bit earlier than usual. So I think it would be actually on the Friday, roughly 2 or 3 hours before kickoff. So that is a message to you guys. I mean, I'm hearing. Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, Nels, that I have just checked the Holly Hotspurs Fantasy Premier League table. And Holly, I told you I was coming for you. I'm now 2 points off you. So I'm coming.
Wow, you're actually 2 points with 560, and Holly's got 562. David, if you're watching, rank bottom. I'm not sure what's going on, but brother, I think you definitely, could use some help. Or Otto Octavius didn't know that Spider-Man's villain was coming through. Second bottom. But looking all the way to the top, we've got Aleph, 6th place. We've got Dan, 5th. I've risen all the way up to 4th place, and that makes me very, very happy because I am creeping up to the top. But Mark, resoundingly with his Leicester City squad, 803 points, he is in the lead. But anything can change in one game week. We all know that anything can change. So that's all FPL. But that is it, Wes. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me on today's pod. I know that you like to get the last kind of shout out for where everyone can find you, but please tell us, where can everyone find you on socials?
Yes, cracking show as always, Nels. Cole and York back again. But yes, everyone can find me on Twitter at Wezo10, unofficial Moose Dembele fan account. He got me a shout out on Sky Sports News last Friday because he was their Premier League mystery player. So as soon as I found out it was him, got the clues, I tweeted them in and they shouted me out. So very happy with that. Instagram's at Wezo32 at the next couple of home games. Obviously, they're tomorrow night against Roma, and I will be there on Sunday against Fulham. And then for everything football coaching related, hit up Kickoff Football Academy or Kofa MK across your socials. And Nelson, that is a wrap, my guy.
That is a wrap. Brilliant, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can find me at nnatumba25 on Instagram. I am not like Wes. I don't have all that kind of fancy stuff, but no, you can find me at nnatumba25 on Instagram. Also, do not forget to obviously follow us at Holly's Hotspurs all across social media. And please do not forget to comment, drop a comment and like and subscribe. But as always, thank you for tuning in and we'll see you next time on the Hotspur Huddle.
Come on, you Spurs.